Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons in the NHL for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And you are watching the Laidlaw and Allen Report, come to you twice a week to talk all the comings and goings in the hockey world. And today's guest is Mike Agello. You know him from the Hockey Buzzcast. He's also the primary Maple Leafs writer for Hockey Buzz as well. And welcome to the show, Mike.
Pleasure, gentlemen. I hope you had a good weekend.
Hey, Mike, I got to say this real quick before Kevin asks you a question. I remember I met you years ago with that, and I thought, who is this guy? What is he? He thinks he knows everything about hockey. You are really, I mean, it's a total compliment to you. You've really immersed yourself in the game of hockey, and you really, I mean, it's very seriously. You're a real expert now in the game of hockey. So good job by you.
I appreciate that, Tom. And I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't have loved hockey since I was like 4 years old, and played Stratomatic hockey when I was a kid, and watched games till 2 o'clock in the morning from the West Coast. I love hockey, and it's the best. So I'm so glad to be doing what I'm doing.
It shows. It shows.
Yeah, Mike's like a poster child for people who want to change careers. He was a banker.
Yes.
Until losing his job in one of the many, cost-cutting moves by banks during the years, and then became evolved into a sports writer and has made a living out of it. So
I didn't know that. Great, nice,
Mike. But I wanted to talk about. I've been fascinated. I looked forward to the Toronto versus Edmonton series because while everyone was paying attention to the fall of the Montreal Canadiens and the struggles they've had. Mm-hmm. The Edmonton Oilers have really picked it up, and they've been quite impressive the way they've played. But, when they had the first meeting with Toronto, mm-hmm. And they were the team that we all projected was going to win that North Division, mm-hmm. and the Oilers didn't play well. Connor McDavid, I think, only had one shot on goal, or did he have any shots on goal?
I think he had one. I think Drysdale had a couple.
Yeah, but they lost 4-0 to the Maple Leafs, and now we've got game 2. Mm-hmm. Are we going to see more of the same, or do you expect a little better effort out of the Oilers?
Well, I think the Oilers will press the attack a little more. I mean, I honestly think that the Leafs' performance on Saturday was their best performance of the year. I mean, you have to take into consideration they didn't have Frederik Andersen in goal, and they didn't have Austin Matthews, who has a sort of a wonky wrist right now. He may play tonight, but they were playing shorthanded, and the Leafs. Traditionally, when Matthews have been out, they've been able to step up their play with their other players and take advantage and be able to recover without having their best scorer there. And that was what they did on Saturday. I mean, Tavares had arguably one of his best games of the year. Their third line, checking line, was extremely energetic. They got contributions from Marner and Nylander and Jason Spezza with a fantastic 2-on-1 goal. And Jack Campbell made 30 saves for the shutout in his first game in over a month. So a lot of things fell right into place. But as you know, Kev, because we've been doing the Buzzcast with you on Fridays, throughout the year, I've been saying that the Oilers are a paper tiger, and lately, they've proved me wrong. I think they were 10-2 in their last 12 games before this game. But if you look at what they've done over the last few games, it's been 39-year-old Mike Smith standing on his head, thinking he's back in Arizona playing with Dave Tippett with the Coyotes, and there was sort of a realization because he had a goals against under 2, a save percentage of like .944, and then he gives up 4 goals, and a couple of the goals were not good. I don't think he can keep that up at his advanced age. I think he's a good backup. He's not a starter. And if they have to go back to Mikko Koskinen, I still think there's a chance that they miss the playoffs. But right now, Draisaitl and McDavid are going great guns. And when that happens, they're going to win the occasional game at least.
Let's get into that a little bit because we have a former NHL defenseman here.
Sure.
And, I've watched the Oilers play this season just because I love to see McDavid and Draisaitl light it up. I'm still an offensive guy at heart, but Tom is a defensive guy. But one thing I've noticed in watching the Oilers is, their defense should perform better based on the talent that's back there. Like you look at those guys all individually. I think we all like Nurse, a skilled player. Barry's having a decent year offensively. Adam Larson. is always up there and hits and gets the job done. He's not an offensive contributor. Ethan Bear has been a real find for them. Like, there's a lot to like about the Oilers' defense, and yet, as you pointed out, that team has been deficient defensively, as long, if not longer, than the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Well, it's the sum of the parts rather than the individuals. I mean, like you said, I mean, Barry has 18 points right now. Barry was ill-served by the trade to Toronto. Babcock tried to make him into a two-way defenseman. He can't do that. He's an offensive defenseman, a puck rusher, a power play quarterback. I think Tippett has realized, okay, that's the guy. That's what he is. Let's accentuate his positive attributes, and he's doing really well for them. He's doing what Tyson Barrie can do. I love Darnell Nurse. I think Darnell Nurse is one of the better young defensemen in this league. I just think right now, they're hurting without Clefbaum. Chris Russell is a disaster out there in terms of, he can't really move anymore. I like the young guys that they have in Bear. Caleb Jones, I think, has some possibilities. Evan Bouchard is going to be really good. I just don't know if they have the depth on the blue line. And like the Leafs before them, I don't think it's just the blue line. I think it's the forwards playing defense, and they're always thinking attack, and they're not thinking about taking care of things in their own zone, Tom. And as you know, the defensemen need help from the forwards. The Leafs are getting the Leafs defense is getting that from their forwards. Austin Matthews is going behind the net and helping win puck battles. I don't see that happening with Edmonton. They're just concerned with one thing: going up the ice and scoring.
Yeah, and it seems like a cultural thing there too in Edmonton, right? Kenny Holland comes in. He's proven himself over many years how good of a general manager he is. Dave Tippett's proven how good of a coach he is. But that continues on and on. That's gone on for a while now, right? They've had all these first overall draft picks and tremendously talented players. But somehow it hasn't sunk in yet that to win, and like you just mentioned with Toronto, they are learning now to win. If they want to win, they have to learn to play both ends of the ice. But Edmonton, for whatever, can't seem to figure that out. And it's obviously the players, right? I mean, they just haven't seemed to figure it out whether they want to or not. I don't know.
Let me play devil's advocate here, Tom and Mike. And I go back to the famous Wayne Gretzky line: if I have the puck, the other team can't score. That's good defense. Sure. It seems to me that Draisaitl and Connor McDavid have the puck quite a bit at the time. They play a lot. Why isn't that enough on this team? It was in some of the great teams of the past.
Tom, go ahead.
Well, you're right, Kevin. You look at the old Edmonton Oilers, like the Wayne Gretzky's, Jerry Curry's, and all those guys. And yes, they had the puck a lot, but I'm telling you, they played well defensively. I'm not saying they were great defensive players, but they committed themselves to playing defense, especially when they had to. I mean, they had a lot of those 9-8 games where Grant Fuhr had to make just one more save to win. But he made it. That was how they talked about that team. If we win 9-8, Grant Fuhr just make one more save. I just feel like when I watched them play, there's that gritty commitment. Like, they were, as much as they were talented, they were gritty back then too. They're in a different way. Like, they were tough to play against when they really had to be. But I just don't see that from this team now. And I how much we talk about culture. I just think it's a cultural thing right now where they just have not learned what it takes to really win. Are they talented? Do they want to win? Absolutely. But they still have some learning to do.
That Edmonton team back in the 80s, I don't want to get too far off the track here, but their defense was always underrated, I thought. I mean, they had a bunch of guys that were just always very dependable, led by the kind of all-world, all-around defenseman in Kevin Lowe. But, you look at the guys like Randy Gregg and Huddy and Craig Muni, and, they always just had a bunch of guys that could get the job done, that knew what
Steve Smith was really good.
Early on, Lee Fogelin was a tough defensive defenseman.
But they knew everyone back there. And the other thing that was sort of misleading about it is they were big boys.
Yes.
Like everybody was 6'2" on that defense or bigger. But they were big and they could play physical. And I also think, we always say you can't turn a switch on to be a defensive team, but they could.
Yes, they could.
They could go click, and then suddenly, if they needed to hold it down a little bit, they could do that.
Yeah, during the regular season, that was party time. That was like, let's go throttle open, let's score as many goals as we can. But when it got to the playoffs with that team, they could play defense. They could shut other people down, or they could limit chances, and that's why they were so effective. Plus, they had multiple levels of talent. I mean, you had Gretzky and Curry on one line, you had Messi and Anderson on another line. You had guys like Dave Lumley, and I mean, they had 3-4 lines that just made it impossible. That's my criticism of this team, is it's all on McDavid and Draisaitl. They average 22 minutes a night. The 22 minutes that they're on the ice is not the problem. It's the 38 minutes without them that's the problem. And I like Nugent Hopkins, but Kaylor Yamamoto's young, Puljujärvi is young, and then the rest of it, it's like it's so interchangeable with so many other players that it doesn't make a difference. And that's the thing, like with the Leafs right now, is that they're, with the additions of Thornton, Spezza, Simmons, and the third line, they have like Ilya Mikheyev, Pierre Engvall was a draft pick. They have a depth level that they haven't had in years, and that's why they're having the success that they're having.
And I was one of the guys at the start of the year that didn't like those changes. I thought you've got, these running gun guys in Marner and Matthews. Now you got these grinded out guys in Simmons. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, that's really not, what are you as a team? But I was wrong. I mean, there's still a long way to go in this, but they've become really like a team, like a Tampa Bay team, maybe, that was a really talented team before, but had to learn how to win. And Toronto seems like they're on that same path.
Well, I was a little skeptical, Tom, at the beginning of the year when they put Thornton on the top line with Matthews and Marner, thinking that he was going to get burned out because, those guys plays 20 minutes a night. And they've effectively limited him to 14 minutes, 15 minutes a night. Then they sub in somebody else occasionally on the line to take the burden off of him. But he's been great. And he's a preeminent playmaker, so he fits what Matthews and Marner do. I think the problem up until recently has been that Tavares and William Nylander haven't performed up to expectations, but they're getting a lot of good contributions from third line, fourth line guys, and their defense has been really steady and not spectacular, but the addition of TJ Brody on the top pairing with Riley, it's been seamless. They've played really well together. You've got a shutdown pairing of Jake Muzzin and Justin Hall, who are big, but can move. And then the third pairing, I was a big critic of Zach Bogosian in Buffalo because he was always either hurt or making bad plays, but he was playing top pairing or second pairing minutes in Buffalo, playing over 20 minutes and making almost $6 million a year. Now he's making $1 million. He's playing 15 minutes a night on the bottom pairing, and all he has to do is get the puck out of the zone and clear the front of the net, and that's what he's doing.
Yeah, the best thing ever happened to him was getting out of Buffalo, where
yes.
That happens to so many players that they come up and they're drafted and the expectations are high and they're not really that player. But once they get out and get to a new team where all those expectations are gone, and what they do is actually pretty good. Like he was always a reasonably skilled person, just couldn't do everything they wanted. And now I thought he made a mistake by not begging Tampa to keep him, but he's done fine in Toronto.
Yeah, he won a Stanley Cup in Tampa. I'm sure he'll always be thankful of that. But apparently he wanted to go to Toronto last year after he got his contract terminated by Buffalo, but they were talking to him just as the David Ayers game happened. And at that point, I guess Kyle Dubas said, you know what, we're not going to make any additions for the rest of the year. We're just going to go with the team that we have. And then he came back this offseason and signed with them, and he's been a great addition.
And what a great job he did last year playing with what's his name? Hedman. Yeah, I mean that's a tough job to do. We joked around about it, like Hedman's all over the place. And now not only do you have to, as Bogosian, you have to read the offensive play coming towards you. You got to figure out where Hedman is and now go where he's not. Right. So that was harder than it looked, and he did a great job of that.
He did.
Mike, what we expect Austin Matthews and Freddie Anderson to be back tonight?
I think it's more of a chance that Matthews is back. Sheldon Keefe yesterday didn't want to come out and say Anderson was going to be back. He practiced yesterday. Strangely enough, Jack Campbell didn't practice, but it was his first game back in over a month, and I think they wanted to give him a break because he was busy on Saturday. But I think there's a greater chance that Campbell starts again tonight than Anderson comes back. But Anderson accompanied the team on their trip west. They're playing 5 games in 8 nights, and I think if he doesn't get in tonight, he'll probably get in on Wednesday.
Yeah. And you mentioned Tavares earlier. Do you think Toronto's getting everything out of Tavares that they thought they were going to get?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been critical of him. I think they see the $11 million price tag, and they expect I mean, he scored 47 goals in his first year, and they're going to expect that every year, and that's ridiculous. But he's a point a game player. When you have Austin Matthews and Marner taking a first power play time, Tavares was on the second power play. Sheldon Keefe has talked about him devoting himself more to playing the two-way game, being responsible, winning faceoffs. That's going to take away from your offense. I mean, I know there are people who have been critical of him. I have not been one of them. The guy who I've been more critical of is William Nylander, because you look at the talent that he has and the ability to break games like he did last week against Calgary, where he tied the game late in regulation and scored the game winner a minute or so into overtime. And you say, oh my God, that guy is such a difference maker. And the problem is he plays like that once every 5 or 6 games. And and to fans who watch that team, that drives them crazy. They would rather have a guy like Zach Hyman, who sometimes can't throw a stone into the ocean offensively, but he tries every second he's on the ice. They would rather deal with that guy than somebody who just turns it off and on like it's a faucet.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Mike. Well, we appreciate having you on as always, giving us your insights on the Maple Leafs, and I suspect they're going to be in this for a long time. So I'm sure going into the playoffs, we'll be having you on as well.
Anytime, guys. Thank you.
I call you Banker Mike from now on. I didn't realize you were in the banking business. That's your
Banker Mike.
Mortgage Mike. It was mortgage
Mike. I like that. That's excellent.
Mortgage Mike. I like that. That could have been a commercial. Mortgage. Yeah. Come and see Mortgage Mike for your your banking needs.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
See you guys.
That was Mike Agello of Hockey Buzz, who is their analyst for the Maple Leafs, and good. He knows his team. He's worked real hard at it. He was very knowledgeable. It's funny. He started out as Mike from Buffalo, and people knew him from calling into the radio shows.
That's right.
Especially in Toronto, because he had grown up as a Maple Leaf fans, and then when he lost his job and during the banking industry collapse, he thought, I'm going to try to turn my hobby into a profession. And, he's been able to do it. He's done
That's a fantastic story. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it really is. He's a really fine guy, really nice guy. So that's good to have him on. And, but, talking a little bit about the Maple Leafs, boy, it just seems like, they've tried a variety of different things to try to get that culture changed. Like they've had the people in place for a while. And by the people, I mean, Matthews and Marner and Nylander. And of course they got Tavares. They recruited him to come there. And I think Freddie Anderson's a decent goalie. Not everybody loves him in Toronto, but I think he's capable of winning a Stanley Cup. That defense has been always a work in progress, but this year feels different to me.
Yeah, it does.
And it feels like they're ready. I like the way you put it. They're learning how to win the big games and, learning how to be, kind of a different team. Yeah. Speaking of different teams, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Colorado Avalanche. They're a team that you and I both liked before the season. And then, they started out 4-3, and they were the odds favorite for Vegas when we started on January 10th. I looked this up. And now they're not anymore. Now it's the Tampa Bay Lightning, and also the Toronto Maple Leafs are right there. Their odds are still very similar to win it all. But if you look at that team, they've been undermined by injuries all season. And even now, the Cale Makar is still out. But in their last 12 games, they're 8-3-1, and to me, they're starting to play like we thought they would after the 4-3 start, where they just kind of like sputtered out of the gate, is what I would say to that. Do you like what you're seeing from them?
Definitely. See, I think they're one of those teams, are that young team that's worked their way up, had a great year last year. Now all the expectations are that they're a contender for the Stanley Cup, right? So now you come in, and I mean, sometimes you don't always handle that well. I mean, I remember when I played, I was on the All-Star ballot. I think it was like my 5th year in the league or whatever. Probably the worst year I ever had. I mean, All-Star ballot. I for some reason I didn't. It was a whole different way of looking at my game. I always felt as myself as that kind of unsung hero. Nobody knows this is what you're doing, and now you're on an All-Star ballot. And I didn't handle it at all, and I recovered from it. But it was weird. But I think it's the same thing as a team. There, you're thinking, wow, we're really something now. And then maybe you don't do all the little things that you should be doing out on the ice. And then, yeah, like you said, you get injuries, and then you realize, okay, guys, we need to get back to playing the way we were playing. And they will. And in some ways, that may be an advantage for them too, right? It's kind of like everybody, well, not everybody, but you somewhat forget about them. Now you're looking at Vegas in that division, like you said, Tampa overall. That they're the contenders here. So I like them a lot. And frankly, to me, anybody that's got Nathan McKinnon and Makar on the same team, that's a pretty good package.
Yeah, I've said all along when Makar came out of college, like to me, it feels like he was born to play with Nathan.
Yeah, they look the same when they play. They look like they're twins out there.
Yeah. They, with his speed and being able to move the puck and stuff, and for McKinnon, it just gives him another weapon to use.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like the team. The big question about Colorado, as we all know, has been their goaltending, and it's interesting. As a journalist for over 40 years, I've always sort of taken people at their word. Like there's a running joke in sports that, when your general manager gives a vote of confidence to the manager, it's the kiss of death. As soon as he says, well, I'm not making a change, well, then they make a change. And so because of that, like people just assume that that GMs lie to the reporters. And sometimes they do. They don't tell the truth. But more often than not, I've found through the years, if a guy says something publicly because he doesn't want to be embarrassed by people saying, well, why did you say that? If you can trust him. And Joe Sakic said last year, I'm not changing my goalies. He said it this year at the beginning of the year. I'm happy with Grubauer.
Yeah, but he did get in on the Marc-Andre Fleury potential trade, though, didn't he?
Did he? I mean, we don't know that. It was speculated that he did, but
that's true. You're right.
Yeah, we don't really know. But anyway, he has said that he has faith in Grubauer, and he has said that he wasn't anticipating any moves. And Grubauer, I looked up this morning, goals against average 2.02. Had a nice run there. He's been fine. So how do you feel about it? Do you have faith in Grubauer, or does he need to go out?
Here's the thing. I think psychologically what Joe Sakic is doing is he's saying to Grubauer, we believe in you. And any player, when the management is saying to you, we believe in you, they become a better player because now there's that confidence is now boosted. If it's the opposite happening where management is shopping around for another goaltender because they don't believe in you, well, your confidence is terrible. Right, you just don't believe in yourself because nobody else around you believes in you. So I think listen, he is a good enough goaltender. He's a National Hockey League goaltender. Obviously, he's not one of the top 10 goaltenders in the league. But if the team's playing well around him and he's playing at the top of his game, I think Joe Sakic is right. I think he is a good enough goaltender. So and again, it's just they've got so much talent on that team. All they need him to do is make the save. They don't need him to be spectacular. Let them go play their game, and he is a good enough goaltender. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they made, it's maybe similar to the 1980s Edmonton Oilers. They need him to make probably not one save, but 2 or 3 excellent saves per game, and they'll be fine because they're going to run up against other teams that have great offense. And to be honest, like it feels like the Avalanche have one of the top offenses in the game.
Yes.
But this season, because of injuries and a lot of factors, like they're down. Like I think they're 12th in scoring. They're still scoring 3 goals a game. But, they're not up there, with the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Edmonton Oilers or, Winnipeg Jets, I think, are 3rd or 4th in the league in scoring, which is not surprising. They got some guns on that team. Yeah, Scheifele's had an incredible season. He's really, played well. Well, the other thing I was going to bring up, you brought up the Vegas Golden Knights. Here we thought they were going to be sitting there struggling what to do with Marc-Andre Fleury, and they need Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yeah.
So he's not going to go anywhere. I guess McCrimmon's the smartest man on the planet.
I mean, they need Marc-Andre Fleury, but still, why did you go get? I still don't understand why.
I don't either. I'm being facetious, but
I know you are. But it's just like, man, they're lucky that Marc-Andre Fleury is such a great competitor, right? He's not sitting there sulking saying, "Why'd you bring this other guy in?" He's going out and saying, "Oh, hey, you brought the other guy in. I'll show you that I'm the best goaltender." So, I mean, that's what you want from your guys, but that's not the way they intended it to be. But
yeah, it's actually worked out well for him as well, and. The other thing I wanted to bring up last night, Patrick Kane got goal number 400, the 100th player in NHL history, which I think is interesting to get 400 goals. And I think if I was Patrick Kane, I'd remember that. I'd tell my kids I was the 100th player in NHL history to get 400 goals.
And how many U.S. players have got that many 400 goals?
Quite
Roenick.
We got Roenick, Kachuk, Modano, Pat LaFontaine, or was he only in the 380s?
I don't know, because he was hurt so much. How about Joey Mullen? Did he get 400?
Yeah, Joey Mullen. For sure.
Interesting.
There's quite a few, but here's the question. I'm not willing to say that Patrick Kane is the greatest player of all time, even though he's got the greatest American player of all time, even though he has really good credentials, just because he's still playing. And I think I don't want to disrespect the careers of Chris Chelios and Brian Leach and Mike Modano.
So who in your mind, who is the best player?
I've always thought it was Chelios was number one, just because in addition to everything else, having won cups, but he was sort of the godfather of the American program. Like everybody looked to him for an international competitions. But I don't have any argument with people who want to say it's Mike Modano or Brian Leach, both of whom also are highly decorated.
Yeah, because you think to yourself, okay, if I'm in a playoff series, a best of 7 playoff series, who's the one guy, if I could pick just one of the top U.S. players, who's the guy I'd want on my team?
Yeah, well, if you're doing that, I would say it's either Chelios or Leach.
I was going to say, at the top of their games, right? Yeah,
because they're both, but they were completely different players. But people forgot, because Chelios played until he was 113 years old. Yeah, they'd forgotten that at the start of his career he was very good offensively as well. Yeah. Now he wasn't Brian Leach. Now Brian Leach was so dominant offensively, but Chelios was better than him defensively.
We're getting some debate here. Somebody's questioning our decision making here. How about Brett Hull?
Well, I guess it depends on your definition. Because Brett it was neither American born nor American trained. He grew up and developed in Canada, and he was born in Canada. So there's always a debate, whether it depends on how you phrase it.
But he did play for the U.S.
He did, but he did not declare until he was an adult. So it's always a question of I sort of view him as an American, but I wouldn't put him as number one. But when the people ask me to rank them and just to include American players and not American born and or trained, I always put him in the 5-6 category.
Yeah.
So I mean, what an incredible score. But
and you think of, I remember Brian Leach in that 94 when they won the cup against Vancouver. So you look at that 7-game series, man, he was dominant. He was,
that's what I'm saying. These should be fun arguments. I wouldn't be upset if someone said you're nuts for saying it's Chris Chelios. If you want to believe it's Brian Leach, I'm totally fine with that, because it's not like it's like I think it's a runaway. It's tight. And Mike Modano, Jeremy Roenick. I wrote 2 books with him, and one of the themes that came out in both books was the fact that he always, he being Roenick, measured himself against Modano. Like growing up, they were same age. They played together in the World Juniors and everything else. And in I think it was the first, maybe the second book, he said, in hindsight, he got the best of me. He was the better player. So.
Yeah, I guess different players too, right? And obviously, JR had played more of an edge to his game than Mike
Modano. He did, for sure. Yeah. But that's how sort of Roenick, kind of viewed it.
That's interesting.
Because he said that's the way he wanted to compare himself to Modano all the time. So, some of it's luck. Like Roenick never won, but I have a hard time with that, because you try to tell me that if you would have put Jeremy Roenick on the Edmonton Oilers in the 80s, that they wouldn't have won. Well,
definitely.
Hey,
I was watching the game yesterday, and they talked about how Doc Emmerich, your good friend Doc Emmerich, was awarded a lifetime pass for 2 to any Major League Baseball game around the country. Did you see that?
No, I didn't, but he'll take advantage of that. Doc is a big Pirates fan, and I think I told the story last year, but I'll tell it again. last year before the pandemic hit, I went to Florida. It was right after I had lost my job from USA Today, and my wife and I went to visit some friends, and we went to Disney World with my son and his wife and my 3 grandkids. So it was a great trip for us. But as part of all that, I'm a huge baseball guy. I actually covered baseball in a previous life before I became a hockey writer at USA Today, and I said I was going to see some spring training, and I'd mentioned to Doc that I was going to see the Pirates play the Tigers in Bradenton. And the next thing I knew, I get 2 tickets from Doc because he has season tickets to the Pirates. And he said, I'm not going to be able to use these because my wife and I aren't going down to Florida this year. So go ahead. So, well, his seats are 2 rows behind home plate. So they were just incredible seats, and I thanked him profusely just because we had so much fun. I was with a group, and what I ended up doing is, I had some friends, and we just took turns. We rotated down in that inning. So I'd bring one of my friends down, and then there's a couple that was with us, and they came down for a couple innings. So we just kept changing. They had the better seats because my seats, of course, were up in in the rafters. But Doc's a big we exchange texts about it, how his Pirates are playing and the Tigers are playing.
What an amazing career, right? To be a broadcaster and have that many accolades come your way at the end of your career, like the Major League Baseball. So you worked in the hockey world, and apparently they had a Zoom call, and the 2 commissioners, Bettman and I can't remember for commissioner for the baseball, were on the call. And even Kenny Albert, and I was even talking about how he said, I can't remember how he said exactly, but I don't think I've ever been on a Zoom or call or meeting, whatever, where 2 commissioners of 2 sports were on there and awarding somebody from the hockey world. So, I mean, to get to that level, to be respected that much for what he's done, that's fantastic.
And he did, as many people, well, maybe some don't, but he actually did call a major league game with Bob Costas for the MLB network.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he called a Pirates Cubs game, and what's interesting about that is the first game he ever saw live was in 1959 when the Pirates and Cubs played at Wrigley Field. His dad had taken him there. So during the pandemic, I just for fun, as everybody was kind of hanging out, I started sending everybody trading cards in the mail. And just as this thing about, hey, keep the faith and everything. And so I found some 1959 Roberto Clemente and Bill Mazurowski, and I sent them to Doc for his deal. So
we've got to get a little NMU, so Northern Michigan University news in there. And this guy is correct. Phil Kessel he's got 379 goals right now. And his father actually played for the football team when I was there playing.
Yeah, I actually wrote a story when Northern Michigan versus Eastern Michigan football in the 70s, and Kessel was the Northern Michigan quarterback.
Oh, is that right?
I'm pretty sure about that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's when he was there. I remember him being there too. And his mother, that's where they went, because I knew both of them actually. His mother went there as well.
Yeah, well, Kessel is is on the list certainly of players.
I didn't realize he was that close. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's been a dynamic scorer. But when you start talking about the greatest American players, he falls down the list a little bit just because I think it's fair to say he was singular dimensioned.
Well, we could call him the best player in the worst condition, it looks like.
Maybe so. But, he was a very valuable player on that Pittsburgh team when they won. Like, I've seen some writers in Pittsburgh say that they never have been able to replace him. That, the power play on Pittsburgh has never been the same as it was when he was playing really well for them. They've always been, which to me makes the Penguins even more amazing, is I've always felt they've never had enough wingers for both Crosby and Malkin. The guys they were playing with, I always felt like they'd be one short.
Isn't it amazing though how they keep hanging in there though? You see the scores and they'll keep squeaking out their wins, or overtime games, whatever it is. I mean, and you got to give Sidney Crosby a lot of credit for that. I think he's just
Well, he is the yardstick by how we measure centers. Like I just laugh when I see fans talk about that don't understand how hard he works defensively and what else he brings. Like he is far from a one-dimensional player.
Yeah, totally.
Like he's hard to play against.
Yeah, he is too. All right, so the big game of the night then is Edmonton Toronto. Who are we picking then? Who are you picking to win that game?
Well, I guess I'm taking Toronto. In my new career as a sports betting analyst. So
okay.
But
all right, then I'll take Edmonton. Is that in Edmonton or Toronto? Or do we know?
I think that's Edmonton, right?
Yeah. Hold on a second here. We got
Look that up.
We got our scores here for Sunday. This is from Monday. We have got Vancouver. Toronto is in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Rogers Place.
So.
Okay.
Well,
so
now fans there. Maybe that's a factor. Right?
So I'm going to go 6-5 for Edmonton. Then that's going to be the score. Okay.
6-5. Okay. Well, I don't think they're going to score that many goals. So I'm going to go 3-2 Toronto.
Okay, you got it. All right, brother.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. I appreciate everyone for listening and for watching us here. Remember that I have a podcast on Tuesdays and Thursdays with Bob Duff on hockeydebates.com, and I write for hockeybuzz.com as well. And Tom, tell everyone where we can see this on the radio.
Kevin Allen is busier than ever. He leaves USA Today, and now he's busier than ever. You can listen to the radio version of the show on radio.co at 365 Sports. Again, that's radio.co at 365 Sports. We'll see everybody on Wednesday.